centuries, the ocean has been a source of inspiration for writers, musicians and poets from all over the UK. The British Isles are surrounded by water, and there's no getting away from the importance of our maritime history and the impact this has had on popular culture. You're listening to The Ocean with me, Richard Hawley. You lead me down to the ocean on a tour of the length and breadth of the UK, which took me from Cornwall to Aberdeen in 7 days. I've been investigating how this country's coastal history has provided us with a wealth of music and literature. This week, we're going to be revealing more about the songs, stories and customs that have grown out of British seafaring industries and jobs done on board ship. One of the stop-offs on our tour was a place that is historically one of the most important ports in the UK, Liverpool. Hughie Jones was the lead singer with the 60s band, The Spinners, and he told us a bit about Liverpool's maritime history and the songs which originated in days when the city was a bustling industrial port.
If you buy me a whiskey, I'll sing you a song. Oh, give me some time to blow the man down.
The Liverpool trade has traditionally been with America, you know, the merchant seamen. And in the early days, in the 40s up to about the 1860s, I would say, a lot of Yankee seamen would come into Liverpool, and they were a really hard bunch. There's a pub down in the city now on Paradise Street, which is the heart of Sailor Town. Paradise Street, aptly named. So these crews, when they came into Liverpool, they really tore the town apart. There's a very famous Liverpool sea shanty called Blow the Man Down, which means knock the man down or something. He says, as I was walking down Paradise Street, to me way, hey, blow the man down. A great handsome copper I chanced for to meet. Oh, give me some time to blow the man down. So this copper meets this guy and he says, oh, I can see you're going to be trouble. You're a Yankee sailor. Because he's got these boots on, the short-cropped hair, but the sailor tries to get out of it by saying he's a flying fish sailor, just home from Hong Kong.
Blow the man down, to be away, hey, blow the man down, they'll blow him right back into Liverpool town.
Sea shanties like Blow the Man Down, with its repetitive chorus and simple rhythms, would have been sung in ports all over the UK for as long as men have gone to sea. Of course, many sea shanties served a practical purpose when human muscles were the only power available aboard ship. They would synchronise the movements of the sailors and generally keep their spirits up. Hughie now sings in a shanty band, and he explained how different types of sea shanty were used for different jobs on board ships.
There's halyard shanties, because the cross pieces on the old sailing ship were called yards or yardarms. Halyard is like hauling the yard. Now that was one of the most commonly used songs because the yards went up and down on the mast. So that had to be done pretty frequently. Little Sally Racket, haul her away. She pawned my best jacket, haul her away. And then she lost the ticket, haul her away. So the hauls would come on the haul her away.
Little Sally Racket, haul her away. She ships in a packet, haul her away, and she never did regret it, haul her away.
In the days of wooden ships, they tended to leak, so they had hand pumps to keep the water out of the ship, and naturally enough, they had a set of songs which are called pumping songs.
Down on the main deck and working at the pumps, there is the larboard watch just longing for their bumps. Look out to windward, you can see a mighty swell, and we wish that you would hurry up and strike the bell, sing let's go below. The looking out to windward, you can see is going to blow.
Probably about the third most common bunch of these songs were the capstan shanties. the guys would man the capstan on these spars, which were 8 foot long. There'd be 2 or 3 fellas on each of these capstan spars, and they'd go around, and the old capstan would go click, 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 and the anchor cable would come up.
Went, paddle back, take in your slack, take a turn around the capstan, heave aboard. All around ship stations, boys, be handy.
We just heard Sally Racket, Strike the Bell, and Paddy Lay Back, which are all perfect examples of these different kinds of work songs.
The colonies for Frisco and for France.
Just like Liverpool, most coastal towns and seaports are buzzing with international traffic and people from all over the world, fusing their different cultures and customs. Life on board ship is just the same, and the sea shanty is a wild mix of musical traditions with roots in every corner of the globe. Early on in our tour, we visited Devon, where we met local folk singer Bill Murray. His shanty choir sang as a version of Shallow Brown. Shallow. The call and response technique used in songs like Shallow Brown have their origins in a much darker period of history, as John Bowden, frontman with the band Bellowhead, explains.
What's amazing about all sea songs is the extent to which influences from all around the world come in, and this is probably most obvious in the sea shanty with the West African influence. After the press gang was outlawed for British citizens, there was a big shortage of sailors. We're talking sort of probably mid-19th century. So what happened is a lot of the merchant vessels would go out to Africa and would press gang African men onto the ships. Arguably, it's sort of the first blues music is the sea shanty. There's a song that I sing with Bellowhead, which is called Fire Marengo, which it's just the nature of the tune is quite bluesy. It's something like, lift him up and carry him along, Fire Marengo, far away, set him down where he belongs, Fire Marengo, far away. And you can kind of imagine, Robert Johnson singing that, with a little bit of tweaking.
Oh, lift him up.
John Bowden made a brief reference to press gangs earlier, a practice where men were forced to serve in the British Navy. It started in the 11th century and continued right up until 1814. Not only were these men taken from their homes, made to work on board ship and sent to war, but the conditions that they were forced to live in were also notoriously squalid. A good friend of mine, the writer, broadcaster and fellow Yorkshireman, Ian Clayton, told us more about this particularly scandalous aspect of our maritime history. We met Ian at one of my favourite stops on the coastal adventure, a little old fishing village called Robin Hood's Bay. It's almost like a picture postcard scene. The fishing boats are up, the sea's out, you can see Robin Hood's Bay, you can see the headland, and you've got Whitby over to our west. And you can just see all the rocks of the bay and the sea breaking on the reef out there. Yeah, so I'm stood here with Ian Clayton. How are you doing? You all right?
I'm all right, yes.
And I think we're going to go inside the Bay Hotel, which is right on Robin Hood's Bay. You can actually look out to the sea while we're going to probably have a pint.
It's our favourite young ploughboy was ploughing on the plain.
There is one song that I adore, really, and it's a sad song. It's sung by an old Norfolk farmer called Harry Cox. It's about press gangs and love. It's about a young boy, the pretty ploughboy, ploughing in his fields, and the press gang come and they capture him and they take him away to sea. And his girlfriend, or his wife-to-be, is so upset and aghast by it that she won't let it drop. It's got this fantastic refrain that goes, And they sent him to the war to be slain, to be slain. And they sent him to the war to be slain. And that's what she's thinking, that this press gang have taken him.
Pressed all over the way, and they send him to the wars to be slain, to be slain. And they send him to the wars to be slain.
There is an alternative history of England, this island, that is bound up quite a lot with the ocean, that people are taken to places and brought back from places for all sorts of reasons. And it's not an history that's taught in schools. But them little people that have to do the bidding of those that are in power are often ignored, aren't they?
History is definitely the words of the victors.
Of course it is, yeah.
Is you never hear the kind of loser story. And I think in song and folk song that you hear kind of the people who suffer as a result of like the great kings and queens and politicians' decisions. At nearly every location I visited on my way from Cornwall to Aberdeen, I heard an alternative version of British maritime history. Speaking to local people throws up stories that are a far cry from the tales of conquest and victory written by history's great naval heroes.
A famed smuggler will watch his steers soothe and serenely took helm to sea, boldly steered out again.
Smuggling is one of the great roguish practices that's been a feature of seaside towns for centuries. The sea can be a great way to escape any rules and regulations. And if laws of the land don't benefit the people, then at sea, men can take the law into their own hands. Smuggling, or free trade as the practitioners call it, was especially prolific in Cornwall, where local historian Tony Pauling told us all about it.
Right, we're now standing on the Customs House Quay. This is the oldest part of maritime Falmouth in many respects. And of course, right on the end of the Customs House is the brick chimney known as the King's Pipe. And one of the major items that was being smuggled in the 1780s through into the 1800s was tobacco. Large seizures of tobacco had been made because so much duty-free tobacco was still being smuggled in at the time. They couldn't find any ready buyers, and so the Customs House officials in London deemed that the tobacco should be just burnt. And they wanted to make a bit of a public spectacle of burning this tobacco to make sure everybody realised that what was happening to the goods that had been seized. And so they built this brick chimney, and they regularly had fires burning the tobacco, and the tobacco stench would sort of smother the town, and so it got the name the King's Pipe.
When his pockets were lined, why his life should be mended. The laws that he'd broken, he'd never break more.
Central government was never popular in Cornwall. All they seemed to do was raise taxes and spend the money elsewhere, usually on a war somewhere. And so any way that the locals could avoid paying tax by duty-free trading, as they considered it, or for the free trade, they were all for it.
He lay to till night came on darksome and dreary, took around every sail that he...
Many songs written about smuggling, like Will Watch, the Bold Smuggler, are almost a celebration of the men who practiced it. And, as Tony pointed out, there was certainly a disregard for authority amongst working people, whose poverty was often overlooked by the ruling classes. It was this subversive attitude, which was also partly the reason why piracy managed to flourish around the UK coast. Again, songs such as Henry Martin, sung here by Joan Baez, mythologised piracy.
There were 3 brothers in merry Scotland. In merry Scotland there were 3. And they did cast lots which of them should go, should go, should go, and turn robber all on the salt sea.
We worked our way up to Aberdeen to hear more about Britain's buccaneers. We're now in the Toll Booth, which is Aberdeen's Museum of Civic History, with Chris Crowley, the City Council's historian. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So we're here in the Toll Booth, which was effectively the prison and the courthouses for Aberdeen from the 17th century through until the 19th. Wherever there's trade, there's going to be piracy. And there's a number of quite important pirates who have emerged from Aberdeen, including one of Aberdeen's provosts, a man called Provost Robert Davidson, who died in 1411. He's venerated locally as a great local hero. But he, along with his great friend, the Earl of Mar, who was, in fact, the Admiral for the North Sea at the time, were pirates. They were known to be pirates. They had been convicted as pirates in absentia in a number of court cases, including ones in Germany and in France. In particular, in France, Robert Davidson was taken to court because he was caught selling goods from a pirated ship, the Marie, which was owned by the then Lord Mayor of London, Richard Whittington, of future pantomime fame, Dick Whittington.
Oh no, cried Henry Martin, this thing it never could be, for I have turned a robber all on the salt sea, salt sea, the salt sea, for to maintain my two brothers and me.
It's the endemic warfare of the medieval period that really allows piracy to flourish. Piracy isn't quite as cut and dried, I think, as it's often portrayed. During wartime, it was legal for people to conduct piracy, providing they had letters of marque and reprisal. And this was an endemic problem. The minute one nation privateers or pirates the goods of another, reprisals will escalate out of all control. The 16th century and the 17th century are the high points of this.
As well as homegrown pirates, Britain and her merchant ships were also a target for foreign brigands. In traditional songs such as The Bold Princess Royal, best interpreted by Sam Larner, these pirates were revered as well as mythologised.
Good Lord, cried our captain, what shall we do now? Here comes a bold pirate to rob.
I was interested to hear about the Algerian corsairs, who targeted the UK's south coast. Attacks from these villains took place frequently between the 17th and 19th centuries. Not only would the corsairs raid fishing fleets and merchant vessels, they would sometimes invade towns and villages and capture civilians. Those who were seized would escape death by adopting the corsairs' religions and customs. This was called going Turk, and it's estimated that between 1600 and 1800, over 100,000 people fell victim to these invasions. Back in Falmouth, Tony Pauling confirmed this to be true.
I wanted to ask you, I suppose more to stub out a mate of mine actually who says that it didn't happen. The Algerian corsairs that used to raid villages.
The Algerian corsairs did come up into the Channel. They did make raids. There are a number of parish records up towards Loo and that area where quite large numbers of villagers were seized by these corsairs, put into slavery, sometimes offered for ransom. This went on well into the 1700s, and in fact probably in some measure, certainly down in the Mediterranean, was still going on until Pelou bombarded Algiers in the early 1800s.
In some cases, British sailors who had turned Turk would assist the corsairs' invasions of British coastal towns. These turncoats became known as renegados, and the most famous of these was John Ward. In folklore and traditional song, he is considered to be a cult hero. John Bowden and his band Bellowhead have recorded a song about him.
There's a song that I sing that's called Captain Ward, who was an extremely successful pirate. He was a millionaire by the end of it.
Let's go and look for Captain Ward, far out on the seas he roams, for he is the biggest robber that ever you did hear.
And he sort of passed into a sort of mythologised version of himself. And I mean, it's interesting because, of course, pirates were baddies, but yet there was also obviously a romanticism about them even at the time. It must just be the subversion of authority. And the last line of the song is, go home, cried Captain Ward, and tell your king from me, although he's king on all dry land, yet I'm king of the sea. Certain sectors of the society, just that idea of someone standing up to royal authority and kind of getting away with it, and that must be a very attractive subject matter.
Go home, says Captain Ward, and tell your king from me, although he's king of all dry land, yet I'm king of the sea. The wind blows high and the wind blows low, all on the raging sea.
So we've looked at songs sung by and about men who worked at sea, whether their work was legitimate or perhaps not entirely lawful. But, as well as jobs on board ship, the ocean has made work for willing hands in a whole manner of different seafaring industries, each with its own traditions and musical heritage. When I was in Aberdeen, I visited the Maritime Museum. Aberdeen is famous for the Thermopylae, a clipper ship engineered and built in the city, which still holds the record for the fastest journey ever made by sail between Shanghai and London. I was very happy just wandering around the museum's corridors and collections of shipbuilding artifacts, while the museum curator, Meredith Grayling, described just how important shipbuilding had been to the local area.
The middle of the 19th century was when Aberdeen was at the forefront of technology and ship design, and that was really thanks to the Hall family. Alexander Hall set up a shipyard here in 1790. The clipper ship bow, sort of the typical, what you think of a clipper ship, is this with a very elegant sort of curved forwards bow. And they're really beautiful ships. They're really aesthetically very pleasing.
Like a lot of things I would imagine in those days, they were probably built hand to eye.
Yeah.
Maybe with a plumb line or something like that.
It's very much rule of thumb, experience. These are very, very experienced, skilled craftsmen.
Not only did shipyards in Aberdeen provide local people with employment, but they also gave them a sense of identity and belonging, and a community where they could share activities outside of work.
The shipbuilding yards had very much a tradition of generation upon generation of men working in the shipyard. And if you look at somewhere like Hall Russell's shipyard, you still will meet people today whose fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers worked at the shipyard. Their social lives were set up around the shipyard, so there would be all kinds of clubs and societies. There was the Hall Russell Male Voice Choir, was set up back at the beginning of the 20th century. Seafaring traditions, you would have people going from port to port taking music with them, and it's an oral tradition as well, so you'll have songs that have survived generation to generation being handed on, and that's something that was tapped into by the shipyards. The two songs that I have, one is the Weary Punno Tau, which is a Robert Burns poem that was set to music, and the other one is the Comrade's Song of Hope. Now, if you bear in mind that this was recorded in the early 1930s, I think both of those reflect what was going on in the shipyard at the time. I mean, the Comrade's Song of Hope is a workers' song that would have tied in with the popularity of communism at the time, spreading across Europe and in working industrial areas. So I think they're in keeping with the times.
Being a Sheffield lad, where the steelworks used to be the beating heart of the community, I can hear the same sense of union and workers' solidarity that I was brought up with in the powerful voices of the Hall and Russell Shipbuilders Choir. Sadly, like a lot of heavy industry in the UK, shipbuilding is no longer thriving like it once was. A man who would later sing about the collapse of this industry is Robert Wyatt. His track, Shipbuilding, was released 2 months before the end of the Falklands War. Elvis Costello wrote the lyrics, and it's an ode to the predicament of the British working class, who were becoming expendable both on the battlefield and off it.
Is it worth it? A new winter coat and shoes for the wife.
Of the 255 British men that died in the Falklands War, most of them died at sea on ships built in struggling shipyards. Costello's lyrics ask, was it really worth it? I spoke to Robert about the difficulties expressed in this song.
It's a very particular thing, shipbuilding, because it's an extraordinary responsibility, isn't it? I mean, to be building something that's going to take these lads out to sea. You're talking about sometimes thousands of people. The great shipbuilding yards, I'm rightly proud of their tradition. I mean, that is important to the history of England and Britain as anyone else in the country, really, and to be treated with respect, which is what in the mid-80s was getting a bit hard to find for working people.
Well, my dad was a steel worker, so I understand totally.
It's just a rumour that was spread around town by the women and children. Soon we'll be shipbuilding.
Today, work on board ship and on the shore in seafaring industries has been changed beyond all recognition, mostly by advancements in modern technology and economics. There is certainly little need for rhythmic sea songs to synchronise human muscle power. However, the tradition of singing shanties lives on, if only to recount tales of mythical characters and preserve this historic practice. In fact, my old friend Jarvis Cocker recorded a shanty, which I also play guitar on. It's called A Drop of Nelson's Blood.
A drop of Nelson's blood wouldn't do us any harm. Yeah, a drop of Nelson's blood wouldn't do us any harm. Yeah, a drop of Nelson's blood wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all hang on behind. When Nelson was killed, to preserve his body for the homeward voyage, they put him in a barrel of rum. But the sailors, being a frugal lot, thought, well, let's not waste all that rum, let's drink it. And so, hence a drop of Nelson's blood. You're actually drinking some rum, but there might be a bit of Nelson in there as well.
It's safe to say that Jarvis wasn't completely sold on the idea of recording a sea song. But there's something about the unifying nature of a shanty that soon won him round.
I kind of thought, sea shanties, it's a bit of a macho, yo, heave-ho, and all that kind of thing. And I'm not really that macho. People may have noticed that. I realised that it was kind of like a blues song. Which blues songs have very predictable changes. Then I thought, I could play this because it's easy. They tend to be pretty simple musically. You're not playing to an audience of musicians, you're playing to your fellow mariners. You don't want to stick a sudden 7/8 time signature in there and throw them off. So they've got to be pretty basic rhythmically. It's like football chants or something like that, really.
And we'll roll the old chariot along. We'll roll the golden chariot along.
And it's not just through song that traditional practices on board ship have been preserved in the modern world. The English language is full of maritime phrases.
Toe the line.
As the crow flies.
Let the cat out of the bag.
3 sheets to the wind.
Most of them we say every day without even realising where they come from.
I'll show you the ropes.
Between the devil and the deep blue sea.
To me, this is further evidence of the great influence the ocean has had on the development of British culture.
Freeze the balls off a brass monkey.
You lead me down to the ocean, so lead me down by the ocean. So, from naval service to piracy and shipbuilding, the UK's industrial maritime history is vast and varied, and with it comes a rich musical heritage. Whether it's heave-ho songs about jobs on deck, or a pop star's lament at the demise of shipyards. Next week, I'll be finding out about some of Britain's most famous shipwrecks and the mysteries surrounding them. I'll also be hearing about the British institutions, which have long existed to save lives at sea, and the songs and stories which were written, almost like prayers, to bring sailors home safely. You've been listening to The Ocean with me, Richard Hawley. The producer was Elizabeth Alker, and this has been a Smooth Operations production for BBC Radio 2.
This is BBC Radio 2 online, on digital and on 88 to 91 FM.